Okay, hello and welcome to this GarrettCom training presentation on dual homing. Okay, so we're going to set up if I show you the network here, this time we're only going to use two switches, and we're basically going to connect one to the other and show you dual homing in action. We have on these two cables we have the IP camera and my laptop, which I'm recording these videos on. And we're going to basically connect two connections between the switch, and we won't use spanning tree protocol, and we're going to rely on dual homing to manage those redundant links, because dual homing gives you an alternative to spanning tree protocol for typically devices which connect to the edge of your network, but it can be used in a ring as well. And it can also be used with ES42s, providing they're the dual homing version. Okay, so this is an example of a dual homing ES42 switch. It's actually called an ESD42. Let me just adjust that so you can see a bit better. ESD42, edge switch, D for dual homing, 42 because it has the block of 4 ports and then 2 link ports. So these are ports 1 and 2. These ports have the capability to do things like link loss learn, which we'll discuss when we talk about spanning tree protocol, and they also have the dual homing functionality, so that only one is active at any one time to provide a redundancy without causing a broadcast storm. And just make sure you have the denoted with a D on the switch as compared to a standard ES42. So basically how it works is you have you can choose any two ports you like on the switch. These port pairs will one will be the operating port and one will be the backup. That is, you can basically choose any pair you like. They can be any media. They can be copper and fiber. So we could have this as a in this and this port here as a pair. We can have them across different modules. It's much more forgiving than LACP is. You can have only one pair of dual homing ports per switch though. So you can have one pair here, but you can't have two on this one. That's one of the golden rules. You can have it connected to any switch downstream, so you have the dual homing running on this switch, and any make or model switch can be connected downstream, because basically the logic is contained within this switch, and everything else is just basically standard Ethernet. As I said, it's typically used to connect an edge device such as this to let me just move that here, an edge device such as this to a couple of switches. So if you imagine these switches are connected in a ring, and we want to have a redundant connection from this switch to this switch, and then a second connection to here. So we have one to here in a redundant link, and this will be sitting at the edge of the network, linking in these devices, a bunch of IP cameras, a bunch of phones, a bunch of PCs, or ATMs or whatever connected there. Once again, like LACP, the golden rule is configure first and then cable second. You are creating redundant links, and without dual homing to manage those, spanning tree protocol will get in the mix and start to take over. And that covers the theory, so let's get on and crack on with the practical. Let's log into the command line and get this configured. Okay, so we're at the command line of the switch via the console cable. We've consoled in here. So if we just log into the switch, sorry, I hit the wrong shortcut key, type in manager and manager, and the commands are under dual home, I believe it is. Bear with me 1 second. Yeah, it's dual home without the space. So let's have a look around and see what we can see. So all the commands will be here, and we need to basically always use the help if you can. There's no need to tax your brain and have to memorize all these commands. Dual home we start off with, and we can add a port, and our two options here is we can either add them as equivalent mode, where one port is just as good as the other, so either one can be primary and either one can be secondary, and if one goes down, the other takes over. However, if the first port which went down should come back up, it doesn't take over control. Now, it's good in a situation where one port is just as good as another, and you're not really fussed about which one is in charge. However, if you want, one port can be the boss and one port can be the understudy, if you like. If the main port goes down, the understudy takes over. But if that port comes back up, then you want that port to be back in charge again and take back over. So two modes equivalent using the first command, and primary secondary mode is within the second command, and you can also delete those arrangements here with this command here. So let's enable the first one first. Dual home. We're going to add port 1 equals. We're going to add port 5 in this case as port 1, and port 2 is going to be port 7. Just to show you there's ports on the switch. So it's port 5 and that's port 7. Okay, the top fast Ethernet ports, not the fiber ports. Okay, so that's that. Once we have the ports configured, we need to just go dual home and enable dual home and show dual home. Shows you the status, it's enabled, and who's running the show at the moment and who's his backup. So both ports and the one who's actually going to be in use. So if we go ahead and connect the cables. Okay, so let me get my bearings. I just need to get hold of my cables. Cable number 1, pop that into port 5, and we can pop that into this next switch. Yeah, port. Actually, I might have jumped the gun here, because I used these switches for the previous demo. So bear with me 1 second. Yeah, so as you can see here, I actually recorded the LACP video before I recorded the dual homing video, and I forgot to wipe that configuration. So if you just bear with me 1 moment, I'm going to wipe these switches and I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so I've cleaned the config on both those switches. Let me just log into that camera again, and I actually don't mind you seeing my mistakes, because I want to try to encourage you to not be afraid to get stuck in, and it doesn't have to be perfect first time. You know, we can always roll back, and you don't have to memorize all these commands. The help is there to do as it says to help. So try to make use of it as best you can. And as I said, anyone can make a simple mistake. There's quite a bit going on here. So right, I'm going to go through the commands again, this time with a little bit more finesse before we attach those cables. Okay, so go into the dual home option to get the dual home commands. Dual home, enable, turn those on. We need to add the ports first, so add dual home. Add, did I say a bit more finesse? Dual home, and then add. And add the 2 ports. So add port 1 equals, first port's going to be port 7, and the second port is going to be port 7. It's been a long day, so the first port's going to be port 5 and the second port is going to be port 7, and these 2 ports are going to be of equal importance. And now once we have the ports, we can enable dual homing, and now we can connect our cables. One of the reasons why I was anxious to wipe the configuration on the second switch is because LACP is particularly sensitive to bringing up those links. Everything has to match. Now we've got no span tree protocol enabled here. All we have is dual homing to manage these redundant links and to prevent those broadcast storms. So what I want to do, if I can, is try to. I am connected here to this laptop, to this switch via the laptop, and what I want to do is ping this first switch's IP address. So this is 192.168.40.1, and this is 40.2, and I'm connected here on 40.100. So I'm going to ping from this switch to this switch. I'm going to kill the active link, and we're going to see how long it takes for the backup to come over. So if I bring up the command prompt, I can show you this in action. And okay, so bring up the command prompt, move this across, ping 192.168.40.1, which is the first switch, and we can get there just fine, which is here. So we're pinging via this connection and this switch across the dual homing links to the first switch. Now I need to know which one of these fibers forgive me, these cables to disconnect in order to ensure a fair test. So if we go back to the command line and then just go in show dual home, that shows us all the information we need to know. Dual home is actually fantastically simple, a touch of theory and a touch of commands, and it's really a no-brainer. The active port is on port 5, as we can see here. So if we go to the switch, if I disconnect this port, the backup link should come up, but that will take a moment or two, so we'll see that interruption. So if I can just reduce the size of this screen. Okay, I didn't want you to have to wait for me to do that, so again, let's ping that first switch and add in the modifier to keep it going. And what we're going to do is we're going to leave that ping running, disconnect the port 5, and we'll see how long it takes for it to recover. So you will have a brief moment where the switches need to think about life and then eventually work out they have a backup path, and we'll see that redundant link come back up. Give it a moment or two. Okay, so we had a few timeouts, and eventually you can see that the replies are going ahead. It took actually a fraction longer than I anticipated, but there's the redundancy coming up, and I'll let back in. And did you notice how we didn't have any interruption that time? The reason why is because they're in equivalent mode, and they're not usurping back. The primary one's not taking over. So they're both the same, they both can be primary, whoever's connected. So if we were to let's go ahead and do that. So if I stop the ping, Control C, and log back into the console, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to use the delete option, dual home this time, and del, dual home del. Dual home report's deleted and dual home is disabled. Okay, so we're going to go dual home, and this time add, and we're going to go primary. So we're going to configure primary and secondary, ports 5 and secondary, port 7, dual home enable, and show dual home. We can see port 5 is configured as the boss, and there's a 7 as the backup. 5 is going to be active, and what we need to do now is go to the command prompt again, and I'll show you those running. Will that work? Will that work? Or did we have a broadcast storm? I think we did. Remember the rule about configure and then cable? Here we are. So it took a moment or two for them to work themselves out because of that delay. So what we're going to do is disconnect the primary link. There it goes. We should have an interruption in service. They need to think about life for a moment or two and work out they have a backup path, and they'll recover. Dual home is not incredibly fast recovery. It's not like rapid spanning tree. Rapid spanning tree can give you recoveries in the milliseconds, around 50 milliseconds. It's so fast most people don't even notice. You don't tend to drop any pings, but this one will recover. Just takes a fraction or two longer. This time I want to be patient rather than pause the video. Try and keep talking, try and think of something interesting to say, which doesn't always come easy. Anything else? Come on. Come on. There we are. There we are. It's back. Took its sweet time, but there we are. We've got the backup link come up. And what we're going to do this time is when we reconnect this cable here, we should see an interruption service again when the primary takes over as the boss. And we'll see how long that takes. Just keep that a moment or two. Did you notice how we only did the dual homing on the one switch? We didn't need to do any dual homing configuration on the second. And this could be an unmanaged. This could be an unmanaged switch if you have the dual homing set up on the managed one. It could be a Cisco, a Hewlett Packard, any brand or any make or model switch here. And the dual homing configuration is configured on the GarrettCom devices, so everything else is just industry standard. And there we have it recover. So that's dual homing setup, configuration, verification with a demonstration. I hope this has been interesting and helpful, and on behalf of GarrettCom, I would like to thank you for your time. Goodbye.